This is the Release and Realization podcast, where we explore emotional freedom and practical manifestation based on the teachings of Lester Levenson and Neville Goddard to help you unlock your inner power and create the life you want. Welcome. In today's episode, David and Anna discuss the most common interpretation challenges in Lester Levenson's teachings and how to overcome them.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We're really glad you could join us.
It's good to be here.
Today, we're opening up a file that, on the surface, looks incredibly simple. I mean, it involves a phrase you have probably heard 1,000 times.
Oh, for sure.
You've probably said it to a friend over coffee, or someone said it to you when you're completely stressed out. Just let it go.
It's the universal prescription, isn't it? Breakups, losing a job, getting stuck in traffic, that sort of general existential dread.
Right.
The advice is always the same. Just let it go.
Exactly. And because it's so common, it sounds almost, I don't know, banal, like something you'd find on a greeting card or maybe an Instagram post.
Yeah.
But the topic we are really digging into today tells a very, very different story. We're looking at the teachings of a man named Lester Levenson.
Mm-hmm.
And if you really get into the mechanics of what he was talking about, you start to realize that what we think letting go means.
And what he was actually pointing to?
They're two completely different universes.
They aren't even in the same solar system. You're right. The central irony here, and this is really the paradox of simplicity, is that Levenson's teaching fails for so many people precisely because it's just so simple.
We can't handle simple.
We can't. We are complex creatures. We have these complex egos, complex lives, complex nervous systems. So when we hear something as radical as let it go, we immediately try to turn it into a complex mechanism.
We can't help ourselves. We want a manual. We want a checklist.
Steps 1 through 10.
Yeah, with a progress bar at the bottom.
Right. We treat it as a technique.
Yeah.
And that is the core misconception we really have to dismantle right at the top of this deep dive.
Okay.
Letting go, in this context, it's not a tool you keep in your psychological toolbox to fix a bad mood. It's not a strategy for self-regulation or, stress management.
So it's not like taking an aspirin for a headache. The logic that usually goes, okay, I feel anxiety, so I apply the letting go technique, the anxiety goes away, and then I can get back to my day.
That is exactly how 99% of people try to use it.
And that's why it fails.
And that's why it doesn't work for them. They turn it into a transaction. Levenson suggests that this isn't something you do at the level of your personality. It's not a behavior. It is a fundamental shift in the state of consciousness itself.
A shift in consciousness.
It's about shifting your awareness from the movie playing on the screen to the screen itself.
I really like that image. Because we're usually so lost in the drama of the movie, aren't we? We totally forget there's a screen underneath it all, just holding everything up.
Mm.
So our mission for this deep dive is to figure out why we keep missing the mark. We're going to dissect why trying to fix the ego is really a dead end, and look at this radical idea of dissolving the identification with it instead.
It's a move from doing to being. And I know that sounds like a cliche you'd see on a coffee mug.
That does a little bit.
But when you get into the mechanics of this, it's actually a rigorous, almost surgical process of internal dismantling.
Okay, well, let's start with that first big hurdle then, the trap of willpower. Because if I'm being honest, when I try to let something go, let's say I'm angry about an email I just got. It feels like an action. It feels like a verb.
Of course it does.
I sit down, I clench my mental muscles, and I say to myself, I am going to release this anger right now.
And that is the action fallacy. That's the most common trap. We operate under this assumption that letting go is something we actively do. But just look at the grammar of that sentence. I am working on letting go. Who is the I that's doing the working?
Well, it's me. My ego, the part of me that's annoyed by the email in the first place.
Exactly. You are using the ego to try and get rid of the ego's problems. It's like trying to lift yourself up by your own bootstraps.
It's the paradox.
It is. Or, to use a different analogy, imagine you're holding a pen really tightly in your fist.
Okay.
That gripping is the action. That's the effort. Letting go isn't a new action you perform on top of that.
So it's not another doing.
No. It is simply the cessation of the holding. If you just stop the action of holding, what happens to the pen?
It falls.
It falls. You don't do a drop. You don't have to push the pen toward the floor. The drop is a natural consequence of stopping the hold.
But we try to force the drop while we're still clenching our fist.
That's what happens when we use willpower. We end up fighting ourselves, expending immense energy to push away a feeling that we are, at the same time, still holding on to.
That distinction that it's a cessation of effort, not an application of effort, that's huge.
It changes everything.
But this connects to something else, which I think is even sneakier, the whole concept of our hidden intentions.
Yes.
Because usually if I'm applying all this willpower, if I'm sweating and straining to let go, there's a reason. I have an agenda. I want the pain to stop.
And there's the catch-22. This is the subtle, really tricky part that trips everyone up. Behind that urge to do the work, there's almost always a hidden motive. I want to change the state.
So I want to feel better.
I want this anxiety to vanish so I can function.
But is that wrong? I mean, let's be real for a second. Who doesn't want to feel better? If I have a migraine, I want the migraine to stop.
Of course.
If my heart is broken, I want it to end. That just seems like a rational human desire.
It's not wrong in a moral sense, and it is certainly understandable. Of course it is. But it is functionally counterproductive in this specific context.
Okay, how so?
If you were trying to let go in order to get rid of the feeling, you are not letting go. You are suppressing. You're engaging in a very subtle form of manipulation. You're essentially saying to the feeling, I will allow you to exist for 5 minutes, but only if you promise to leave afterwards.
That's not allowing at all. That's a hostage negotiation.
It is a hostage negotiation. And the feeling, so to speak, knows it. The resistance is still there. It's just disguised as spiritual practice.
So what's the real distinction then?
The key distinction here is that true letting go is not about removing the feeling. It is about ending the attachment to the feeling.
Okay, hold on. That's a big one. Ending the attachment, not necessarily the feeling itself. So the feeling it might still be there?
It might. For a while. But if there is no attachment to it, doesn't matter. If you aren't gripping the pen, it doesn't matter if the pen is on the table or on the floor. It's not yours anymore.
You aren't defining yourself by it.
Exactly.
This reminds me of the specific mechanism people use, the questions. Levenson is famous for this sequence. Could I let this go? Would I? When? And I've seen people use these like an incantation. They just loop them over and over and over.
Yeah, the mechanical trap, yes. It becomes an algorithm. It's like they're punching a code into a keypad to unlock a safe. If I just ask, could I, 50 times, the sadness door will open.
Or they get stuck. I asked, could I? And the answer was no, so I guess I'm failing at this.
And that's exactly how people interpret it. But these questions are not magic formulas. And they aren't even really designed to get a literal yes or no answer that, dictates your fate.
So what are they for?
They're designed to be a doorway.
A doorway to what?
A doorway back to the position of the witness. I mean, think about it. To even ask the question, could I let this feeling go? You have to step back from the feeling just a tiny bit to even look at it.
You have to separate from it.
You have to create a gap between you, the observer, and it, the feeling. That tiny gap is the magic. The question isn't about the answer. It's about provoking that shift in perspective.
But when people use them mechanically,
they're turning the questions into another form of control. They're banging on the door instead of just walking through it.
It's really fascinating how we can take something that's designed for freedom and just turn it into another cage.
Always.
I want to zoom out a little bit here. We've talked about the mechanics of the trap, but there is a bigger context about what we think this work is actually for. We live in the era of optimization, right? Biohacking, self-help.
The Better Me Project.
The Better Me Project, exactly. We want to be the best versions of ourselves. But looking at this philosophy, I get the distinct impression Levenson wasn't really interested in making us better people.
No, he wasn't. And this is the Better Me illusion. It's a hard pill to swallow because we are so conditioned to view everything as self-improvement.
Of course.
We want to be calmer, more loving, more productive. We want to be that Zen guy at the office who never gets rattled during a crisis.
The person who just floats through the chaos while everyone else is panicking. That's the dream.
That is the dream.
Yeah.
But that is just a polished ego. That is just a better mask. Levenson's teaching wasn't about improving the personality. It was about making the personality transparent.
Transparent.
And eventually dissolving the identification with it entirely.
Okay, dissolving the personality. That sounds, frankly, it sounds a little terrifying. It sounds like ego death.
It is. And it's the difference between improving the prison cell and walking out of the prison.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Most self-help is interior decoration for your cell. You put up some nice curtains, you get a comfortable bed, you learn to manage your stress within the four walls. Levenson is handing you the key and saying, why are you decorating? Just leave.
But we love our decorations. We identify with them. I'm a stressed but high-achieving executive. I'm a struggling artist. I'm a good parent who worries a lot.
And that brings us to the difference between emotional regulation and true liberation. In therapy or stress management, we're often taught regulation.
Right.
I shouldn't be so angry. I need to breathe through this so I can calm down. It creates this binary. Calm is good, anger is bad, happiness is good, sadness is bad.
And Levenson, he rejects that binary.
Completely. Levenson says, allow whatever is present. If you are angry, be angry. If you are sad, be sad. The mistake is thinking that the method is there to fix the bad emotions.
So using it to avoid feeling bad.
If you use this method to avoid negative feelings, that is the textbook definition of spiritual bypassing.
It's just using spiritual language to avoid feeling human pain.
Precisely. And the irony is, by trying to avoid the so-called bad emotions, you create a new attachment, an attachment to being calm or spiritual.
And that can be just as much of a trap.
It can be just as rigid, just as limiting as an attachment to anger. You become terrified of losing your cool because your identity is now all wrapped up in being the calm one.
We have to talk about the manifestation trap, too. This is huge right now, especially on social media.
Well, it's everywhere.
You see it constantly. Release your blocks to wealth. Let go of the resistance to finding your soulmate. The logic is always, I have a block. If I let it go, I get the prize.
It is a very, very popular misunderstanding. It instrumentalizes the teaching.
What do you mean by that?
It turns a path of absolute freedom into a tool for acquisition. And it's incredibly seductive. I'll do the spiritual work so I can get the Ferrari.
Or the relationship, or the promotion.
Right.
But Levenson himself, he did talk about manifestation. It's not like he promised a life of poverty. He seemed to suggest that things do happen when you let go.
That is true.
Yeah.
He did. But the framing is critical. Manifestation is described as a side effect, never the primary goal. And here is the paradox. You cannot use letting go as a tool to get things, because the wanting the thing is the very attachment you're supposed to be letting go of.
So if I'm sitting here trying to let go of my poverty consciousness, specifically because I want a check in the mail,
then you are still gripping the desire for the check. You haven't let go of anything. You've just engaged in a complex mental barter system with the universe.
you're trying to trick reality.
You're saying, look, universe, I'm being spiritual, now give me my reward. Real letting go means you reach a place where you genuinely, truly do not need the check to arrive to be okay.
And paradoxically, that's usually when the check arrives.
Often, yes, because you've finally gotten out of your own way.
Yeah.
But you can't fake that state. You can't pretend not to care just to get the result. It has to be authentic. You have to be willing to be happy without the thing you think you need.
Let's shift gears a little bit to something that I think gets overlooked a lot when people just read about this stuff in books. We tend to think of this as a head game. You know, I think a thought, I release a thought. But looking deeper, it seems this is what you might call a heady mistake.
This is critical, absolutely critical. We live in our heads, so we try to solve all our problems in our heads. We analyze, we categorize, we rationalize.
We think our way through everything.
But emotional charges are not just floating thoughts like clouds in the sky. They're physiological patterns. They're somatic. They live in the nervous system, in the body.
So I can understand the concept of letting go perfectly on an intellectual level. I could write a whole dissertation on it and still be completely stuck.
Absolutely. Pure insight isn't enough. You can analyze your trauma for 20 years, understand exactly where it came from, and not shift the energy of it one iota.
So what's the key then?
The nervous system only reorganizes itself when the feeling is fully allowed without mental interference. That implies a physical component. You have to be willing to sense the energy in the body.
What does that look like practically? Because allowing bodily sensations sounds a little abstract.
It means dropping the story and just feeling the raw data. When you say, I'm anxious, what is actually happening in your body?
Okay, so maybe my chest is tight. Or my stomach is churning. My face feels hot. Maybe there's a buzzing in my hands.
Yes. And usually when you feel that, what's your first instinct?
To run,
Yeah.
to get away from it. I distract myself. I check my phone. I grab something to eat. I turn on the TV. Anything to not feel that.
Right. The body wants to flee. That's the biological imperative. Avoid pain. This practice requires the body not to flee. This physical staying with the sensation.
Yeah.
That's where the shift actually occurs.
So not in the mind?
Not in the mind saying I release. It's in the nervous system realizing I can feel this intense energy and I am not dying. I am actually safe.
So it's almost like a kind of exposure therapy for yourself.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
You're retraining the nervous system to stop reacting to the sensation as if it were a threat. And when you stop reacting, the energy can finally move. It processes itself.
But you have to be willing to feel the burn.
You have to sit in the fire.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about grounding the experience in physical reality rather than just letting it be an abstract thought. But there is a deeper block here, isn't there? Something even more fundamental than the body or the desire for money. We need to talk about the deepest block, the unwillingness to let go of identity.
This is the scary part. This is where the rubber really meets the road. We all say we want peace and freedom, but do we?
Really?
Really? Because peace and freedom often mean the end of who we believe we are.
Our stories?
Our stories. Our grievances, our traumas, our victories, they construct our identity. If I let go of my story of being a victim, my parents treated me badly, my boss was unfair, the world is against me. If I truly drop that story, who am I?
That's the fear of the void.
It is a genuine fear of loss of control. It's the dissolution of familiar structures. And even if the structure is painful, it's familiar. It's home.
It's what we know.
We would rather be miserable and know who we are than be free and be nothing, or at least nothing that the ego can recognize.
So how do people avoid facing this fear? Because most people don't just stop and stare into that void.
No, they play the substitution game.
The substitution game.
Instead of letting the process actually consume them and dismantle that identity, people start practicing the method. They become students of the method. They analyze it, they discuss it, they listen to deep dives about it.
Wait a minute, are you calling us out right now?
Maybe, just a little bit. But it is a real trap. It becomes a hobby rather than a dissolution.
It's safer.
It is much, much safer to be an expert on the theory of letting go than to actually let go. Because the expert is still a somebody. The expert has status. The person who has truly let go, nobody. They don't have a badge to show for it.
And this feeds right into the expectation barrier, that constant checking for results.
Yes.
Is it gone yet? Do I feel better? Am I enlightened yet?
The are we there yet of spirituality. Exactly. But letting go is a state shift. It's not a linear event like building a shelf. The moment you check, is it gone? You have stepped right back into the controller seat. You're auditing the process.
And the expectation itself is just another attachment.
Expectation itself is a very strong form of attachment. It stops the process cold because you are no longer with what is. You're looking for what isn't. You're looking for the absence of pain rather than the presence of this moment.
Okay, so we've covered all the ways we get it wrong. We try to use willpower. We try to fix ourselves. We ignore the body. We cling to our identity.
A lot of traps.
Let's pivot. If letting go is not a technique we do, what is it? How do we find this functional state of consciousness?
It starts with a shift in position. That's the best way I can describe it. It's not something you learn to do. It's a position you recognize. And it starts with non-identification.
Non-identification.
This is a subtle linguistic and perceptual shift, but it changes everything.
Can you give us an example of that shift?
Okay, normally we say, I am sad. In that sentence, the I and the sadness are fused. They're one thing.
Right. I equals sad.
Yes. The functional state shifts this to there is sadness, or sadness is appearing.
It sounds like such a small grammar change, but that feels huge. I am sad. Feels like the sadness is me. It defines my boundaries. But there is sadness feels like I'm the room that the sadness is just sitting in.
That is a perfect analogy. You are the space, not the furniture. It is presence without ownership. You realize the feeling does not need to be me to exist.
It's just a thing that's happening.
It can just be a phenomenon passing through, like a weather system. The sky doesn't say, I am a storm. The sky says, there is a storm here right now. The sky allows the storm, but it isn't damaged by it.
And this leads to what is often called the witness attitude. What does that witness state actually look like?
Practically, it's not some mystical, floaty, dissociated state where you pretend you don't exist. It's characterized by alertness, quietness, and non-reactivity.
So you're not passive.
Not at all. It involves deep, open sensing without analyzing. The witness doesn't ask, why am I sad? Or when will this end? Or whose fault is this?
It just watches.
It observes the texture of the sadness. It feels the weight of it. It's curious, but it's detached.
And why does this work? Why does just watching it make it dissolve? It seems too passive.
Because emotions need fuel to survive.
Yeah.
And the fuel of emotion is usually one of two things: resistance or identification.
Okay.
If you fight an emotion, you feed it. If you identify with it and say, this is ME, you feed it. When you step back into that witness attitude, you cut the fuel line. You stop adding the story to the sensation.
And so the fire just burns itself out.
Exactly. It might flare up for a moment. Often it gets louder right before it goes.
Okay.
But without any new wood, without your resistance in your story, it eventually just turns to ash and blows away.
This brings us to a concept that I found really challenging to wrap my head around, and that's the paradox of no goal.
Yes.
We are so goal-oriented. Our entire society is built on KPIs and objectives. How can you possibly do something with no goal?
This is what you could call inner non-interference. The attitude is simply, this feeling is here, and I have nothing to do about it.
That sounds an awful lot like resignation. I guess I'm just stuck with this sucks, but whatever.
It's distinct from resignation. Resignation has a heaviness to it, a sense of defeat. Resignation says, I can't win. Non-interference says there is no battle.
Oh.
It's an active, alert allowing. It's saying, I am not going to manipulate this moment.
Yeah.
And the ego finds this incredibly difficult because the ego's entire job description is to manipulate moments to ensure survival.
So it only works when you aren't trying to make it work.
Precisely. If you are allowing the anger so that it will go away, you are not allowing it. You are waiting it out.
You're tapping your foot, checking your watch.
Exactly. Okay, anger, I've allowed you for 10 minutes. Why are you still here? True non-interference means being willing for the feeling to stay forever.
That's the willingness to stay.
Yes. The concept of no flight. It is the willingness to feel a feeling fully without needing it to change or disappear.
And what does that look like in the body?
Physiologically, this means no tensing, no holding the breath. You open the door wide and you say, okay, come in, stay as long as you like, move in, rearrange the furniture if you want.
And that has to be the difference between fake surrender and true release.
It is. Fake surrender is a strategy. All surrender so the pain stops. True release is the recognition that there is nothing to control. It's realizing that the control you thought you had was an illusion anyway.
You never controlled the weather.
You just thought you did.
And when you reach that point, you hit what you've called identity neutrality.
This is where the personality is no longer the center of the universe. The stance becomes, anything may appear, and I do not change because of it. The storm can rage, but the sky is not damaged by the storm.
It's a fundamental stability.
That stability is where the emotional charges lose their grip. They can't hook into anything because there's no Velcro left.
I love that image. No Velcro left. So let's talk about the nature of the result. If we do, or rather, if we recognize all of this, what happens? Levenson emphasizes that letting go is a consequence, not an act.
It's a byproduct. It happens because nothing is holding on anymore, not because you successfully performed a ritual.
It's like opening your hand.
Exactly. You don't have to do the dropping of the object. If you stop holding, gravity takes over. The letting go happens to you.
And it's a process of removal, not addition.
Yes. We are always trying to add to ourselves. More knowledge, more peace, more skills, more accolades. This teaching is all about subtraction. It removes what you thought you were.
How so?
It chips away the false identities and the accumulated conditioning. It's like sculpting. You don't add clay to make the statue. You remove the clay that isn't the statue.
Which brings us to a bit of a reality check. We should probably be pretty frank that this doesn't fix life in the way we usually want it to be fixed.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't guarantee that you will never have a problem or that you will always be happy in that conventional sense.
It's not about making the movie of your life have a happy ending.
It's about realizing you are the screen, not the movie. It frees consciousness from its assumptions, but it doesn't necessarily tidy up your external circumstances. You might still get fired. You might still get sick. The car might still break down.
Though, ironically, when you stop fighting your circumstances, they often become a lot easier to navigate.
That is the paradox, isn't it? When you stop fighting the current, you can actually float. You waste less energy. You make clearer decisions because you aren't reacting out of fear or desperation.
And so life often gets better.
Yes, external circumstances often do improve, but that's just a nice bonus. It's not the point. The point is the freedom itself.
This has been a really dense but incredibly illuminating look at this work. It's just amazing how much nuance is hidden inside two simple words: let go.
It really is. It shifts the whole paradigm from self-help to self-realization. It moves us from trying to fix a broken self to realizing that the self we're trying to fix is just a collection of thoughts we're holding on to.
So if we had to boil this entire discussion down to a single sentence, a one-sentence summary of the core philosophy, what would that be?
If I had to synthesize it, I would probably say this. It is the state where you do not want to be elsewhere, you do not want a different state, and you do not want to stop being what you are, even when it hurts.
Even when it hurts. That's the kicker.
That is the willingness. That is the fire that burns away the dross.
As we wrap up, we always like to leave you with a final thought to mull over, something to take with you into your week. We've talked a lot today about the me that tries to fix things, the me that wants to be better, the me that is constantly checking the scorecard.
Right. So consider this. If you stop trying to fix your experience, if you just put down all the tools and the strategies and the techniques, who would be the one left experiencing it?
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed the conversation, please consider subscribing to the channel. For more in-depth and advanced content, you're welcome to join us on Patreon. We'll be back next week with the continuation of this topic.